Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. In the late 1970s, the last batch of educated youths was being sent to the countryside, and only one of us, my sister or me, could stay in the city. Mom said that since my sister Emily had always been frail, and was also the prettier one, it would be safer for her to stay. I was about to argue when Emily suddenly dropped to her knees with a loud thud. Anna is smart and capable. She'll be of much greater use in the city. Let me go to the countryside instead. Her tone was firm. Mom couldn't convince her otherwise and was ultimately forced to agree. As Emily boarded the train, she turned to me and said, "Anna, in this lifetime, I will become the chairman's wife." At that moment, I knew she had been reborn, but I had no idea if she'd be willing to cut off one of her own fingers this time. Ever since we were little, Mom had always favored Emily over me. Maybe it was because I had been strong enough to swing an axe and chop firewood from a young age, while Emily was the delicate treasure that Mom had spent 3 days and nights in labor to bring into this world. She was born in the middle of winter, and during her first month, she fell ill multiple times. Meanwhile, I was outside playing in the snow, building snowmen and having snowball fights with the neighborhood kids. As we grew up, all the heavy chores fell to me. By the time I was barely a teenager, I was already helping out at the butcher shop near the bus station, slaughtering pigs whenever they gave me extra pig blood or offal to take home. Mom would scold me. "Why aren't you helping out at home instead of bringing back these disgusting things?" I told her, "If I bring these to Mrs. Williams's house, she'd probably kiss your hands in gratitude." Mom scoffed. "How spoiled you are. Mrs. Williams is from the countryside. How can you compare yourself to her? You take after your grandfather. Those legs of yours, do they even look like a girl's?" Mom had grown up in the city. She was delicate, only ate fatty meat, and never touched lean cuts. Emily was just like her, frail and prone to illness. Every time she got sick, it cost my dad half a month's salary, so naturally, Mom favored her. Later, the government required families to send a relative to the countryside. Dad was sent far away to Gua, and only one child could remain in the city. Mom had already decided that I would be the one to go, but to make it look fair, she called both of us forward and, in a seemingly kind gesture, stuffed a handful of pork lard candies into my pocket. I knew exactly what that meant. In my past life, I had fought my way out of the countryside, carving a bloody path for myself. I had become the chairman's wife. Now, in this life, I should be able to become the chairman myself, so I wasn't afraid of going. Mom said, "The government only allows one child to stay. Your father has been sent far away, and Emily has always been weak. She's also prettier. It's safer for her to stay in the city." I knew she wasn't asking for my opinion. She was informing me of her decision. I was about to say, "Fine," when Emily suddenly dropped to her knees with a loud thud. "Mom," she pleaded, "Anna is smart and capable. She'll be much more useful in the city and can take care of you. Please let me go to the countryside instead." I sat in the main chair, studying her carefully. In my past life, she had cried for days, even faked an illness just to avoid being sent away. But this time she was fighting to go. It didn't take me long to figure it out. She had been reborn just like me. Mom refused at first. No matter how much Emily cried, she wouldn't budge. It wasn't until Emily pressed a knife against her own neck that Mom finally gave in, breaking down in tears. My sister had always been afraid of pain. There was no way she would actually hurt herself. The whole ordeal dragged on until nightfall when their stomachs started growling, and they finally realized that no one had brought them food. Mom called me over and scolded me viciously. "Anna, are you trying to kill us?" "Okay, you see, it's already late and you still haven't made dinner," I replied matter-of-factly. "You two were crying so much, I figured you wouldn't be hungry, so I ate first." "You ungrateful brat," she cursed. "How did I give birth to such a heartless child? Your sister was thinking of you, trying to spare you from hardship by offering to go in your place. And what do? Stuff yourself with food while your mother and sister starve." When my mom yelled at me, her voice was loud and sharp. Clearly, she wasn't all that hungry. I said, "I never told her to go to the countryside. I can go instead." Emily immediately refused and shouted loudly, No. I'm going. I want to go. I found it exhausting to keep up this act in front of them, so I simply ignored them and left for Mrs. Williams' house. Her husband, Mr. Williams, was a carpenter. I had heard that he had managed to bypass the usual restrictions and get into the shipbuilding industry. I wanted to ask him about wood materials. In my past life, Mr. Williams was one of the first private business owners in town. He built his wealth by trading lumber, and eventually became the county's first millionaire. He was a simple and kind man, well liked by everyone. But later he fell ill, and with no strong pillar to support the family, they lost their standing during what should have been their golden years. I stayed there for 2 days, and my mom never came looking for me. It was only when Emily was about to leave that she finally sent someone to find me. Mom gave Emily all the best things in the house. Even as she boarded the train, Mom kept giving her endless reminders and instructions. I stood there watching the two of them, mother and daughter, so deeply bonded. As Emily stepped onto the train, she turned back to me with a smug smile. "Anna, in this lifetime, I will become the chairman's wife." I nodded and gave a quiet hum of acknowledgement, my expression calm and unchanging. She looked at me with confusion, and then with pity. What an idiot. Emily had always thought I was foolish, whether in our past life or this one. She believed that despite my good grades, I was just a bookworm who knew nothing about the real world. She believed that finding a good man to marry was the smartest path a woman could take. In my past life, I had been sent to the countryside and married the village chief's son. But by sheer luck, I encountered an era of great opportunity. I started a business, made more and more money, and eventually became the chairman's wife of a major fast food company. Emily, on the other hand, had married a man who lost his job during an economic downturn. She only had 2 daughters, and life became increasingly miserable for her. She envied my wealth and status, so she poisoned the cured meat she sent me with pesticide. She only saw the glamorous life I lived but never understood how much hardship I had endured to get there. Every turning point in my life had come at the cost of my courage, my struggles, sometimes even my life itself. I knew she had been reborn. I just didn't know if she would dare to cut off one of her own fingers this time. As the train carried her further and further away, I turned without hesitation and walked toward the station exit. I had always been a good student, but my mom had no intention of letting me continue my education. "Your sister has gone to the countryside," she said. "You need to find a job to support yourself. Your dad's money isn't enough for the 2 of us. Your sister is suffering out there, so we have to send her some good things." I nodded in agreement. "There's no need to keep studying. I doubt you'd even get into a technical school." At the time, passing the technical school entrance exam meant you could secure a government-assigned job, but my mom wasn't willing to wait. I nodded again. "That's fine. I'll enroll in a 6-month training course at the Open University. That way, I'll still be able to get a job." She scoffed at my plan. 6 months? Where would I find the money to support you for that long? Yesterday, Uncle Lou came over and asked if you'd be willing to get engaged to his son. They're offering a bride price of 1,000 yuan. If we settle this, you can move in with their family. I looked at my mother as if she were insane. "If you have too much free time, why don't you go buy some baby chicks to raise? If you like their son so much, you can divorce dad and marry him yourself. After all, marriage is free now." "You ungrateful child," she screamed, pounding the heated brick bed in frustration. I couldn't be bothered to argue with her. Instead, I went straight to Lou's house and beat his son up. When I returned home, I noticed that my mom's bedroom light was still on. Quietly, I peeked inside and saw her sitting by her money box, guarding it. The box was old, rusted, with a large peony flower embossed on the lid. New Year's was coming soon. In a few days, that box would probably be stolen by a thief. Better me than a stranger. That night, I stole 50 yuan and ran away. From a distance, I saw my mother sitting on the ground, crying and shouting that she was cutting ties with me. I had the money to pay rent and buy books and notebooks. Fortunately, since the government was encouraging enrollment at the Open University, tuition fees had been reduced. I didn't have to carry too much of a financial burden. In my past life, I never had the chance to go to school. Now that I did, I was determined to keep learning. I knew I couldn't rely on my mom, so this wasn't the best time to focus on college entrance exams. I was still young. There would be opportunities. The government had already started allowing city folks to run small businesses, so I used the little money I had left to set up a small repair stand in a town not far from the county. In my past life, I had built my success on my skills, and in this life, I could only do better. This town had a lot of people passing through on their way to the county, but it was still a decent distance away. Bicycles were becoming more common, but there weren't many repairmen around. At first, people didn't believe that a young girl like me could fix bikes, but when they saw that my rates were cheap and my work was quick and efficient, they started to trust me. Word spread that I was skilled, fast, and affordable. Even people from the county began coming to me for repairs. Of course, running a business still had its risks. There weren't many customers at first, and I was barely making enough to get by. But through these interactions, I met a lot of people, especially those secretly running small businesses on the side. They didn't have to say anything outright. I could already guess most of what they were up to. Over time, I unexpectedly got acquainted with a powerful figure who, in my past life, had built his fortune through transportation. Just as I started feeling hopeful about the future, my mother showed up. I had thought she would at least wait 6 months before coming to find me, but barely a month had passed before she tracked me down. Anna, something happened. Something happened. Emily is in trouble. I wasn't surprised she had found me. In fact, she had probably known where I was as soon as I set up my stand. What did catch me off guard was how quickly Emily had ended up with my past life's husband. My mother grabbed me and shouted, "You have to get on the train today. We're going to see Emily. How can you just ignore your own sister's future?" As she spoke, she kicked over my repair stand. It was the same as before. Emily's original husband had been a gambling addict. Supporting them had felt like throwing money into a bottomless pit. How do you know she wasn't willing? I asked flatly. My mother cursed at me. She's still young. She hasn't even finished growing yet. How could she be willing? You have such filthy thoughts. You should be sent to labor reform. I couldn't be bothered to argue with her. At first, I had no intention of going, but seeing how she was ruining my things, I knew I had no choice. The two of us packed some luggage and food and boarded the train. It was a 10-hour ride followed by another 5 hours by bus. We finally arrived in a village called Bozy. I knew this place all too well without needing directions. I took a few turns and arrived at the village chief's house. The village chief sighed and said, "Zach and Emily are already together." It was her choice. My mother immediately snapped, "Choice? My Emily is educated and well-mannered. If you hadn't used your power as village chief to force her, how could this have happened? I'm going to report you, report all of you." She started yelling and even turned to me, shouting, "Grab something and fight them." I stepped aside and watched as Emily came out of the house, happily holding Zach's hand. There were still red marks on her neck. It seemed like things had been intense. Zach's pants were even on backward. "Mom, why are you fighting?" Emily asked sweetly. "I called you here to witness my happiness." She then turned to the village chief, whose face had a deep scratch across it, and gasped in shock. "Dad, you already got into a fight before the wedding." My mom froze. It only took her a second to realize what was going on before she passed out from rage. I caught her before she collapsed, but as I looked at Emily and Zach holding hands, I felt disgusted. In my past life, Zach and the village chief had schemed to tie me up in the ancestral hall, strip me, and make a spectacle of me in front of the whole village. I had been forced to marry Zach, and even when I called home for help, they wouldn't even pick up. With nowhere to turn, I had no choice but to rely on myself. Eventually, through my guidance, Zach had straightened out his life, but in this life, he was nothing more than a scoundrel who bullied others by relying on power. Now that we were here, my mother had no choice but to accept reality. I had no idea what Emily whispered to her, but whatever it was, she managed to coax Mom into smiling again. At the wedding feast, my mother ignored the villagers' amused stares and drank happily. Meanwhile, I overheard the gossip circulating around the village. Emily isn't as innocent as she looks. She threw herself into Zach's bed after meeting him only twice. She's only 15. Who knows how many men she's been with before this? At the table next to us, I noticed Zach's gang of lowlife friends whispering among themselves, heads lowered. I remembered that in my past life, when the village chief was arrested and sent to prison, these were the very same men who were the first to rush in and loot his house. At the time, Zach and his mother had only known how to cower inside their home while chaos erupted outside. It was me who had grabbed a kitchen knife and fought back, scaring them off. As I studied them, I realized they kept glancing in my direction as well, their eyes holding something beyond mere curiosity. It wasn't the look you'd give a stranger. I turned away and saw Zach and Emily approaching me with their wine glasses raised. Emily smiled as she picked up a bottle and filled my empty cup to the brim. "Anna, thank you for coming to my wedding. I'll be happy. Promise, this wine smells amazing. Hurry, have a taste." Zach grinned ear to ear. He also lifted his glass in a toast. I remained seated and raised my bowl instead. There was still some chicken soup left in it. I lightly tapped the rim against their glasses before drinking it in one gulp, but I didn't touch the wine. In my past life, drinking what Emily offered had nearly cost me my life. If I drank this now, I'd be an idiot asking for death. I noticed the way the two of them exchanged glances at least 800 times in just a few seconds. That only made me more certain that I wouldn't be touching that wine. "And I'm toasting you. Why aren't you drinking?" Emily's faint disappointment turned to Zach with a hurt expression. Zach immediately stepped in to defend her. "Anna, that's not right. It's our wedding. Surely you can at least have one sip of our celebratory wine." I gave him a calm look. "I'm not even 16 yet. My dad always said if I ever dared drink, he'd break my legs." As soon as the words left my mouth, Emily froze, her wine glass halting midair. Her face turned red, then pale, then red again. An interesting sight, but she didn't argue. With no excuse left, she called for someone to bring out a tray of sweets and placed a piece of lard candy in my hand. "Anna, I saved your favorite for you." I had never actually liked sweets, but when I was little, the kids who had lard candy were the ones loved by their parents, so I had always wanted it. Over time, that desire had become an obsession. "You're going to have a hard life in the village. Keep it for yourself," I said, pushing it back toward her. Emily's eyes darkened. I suddenly noticed that at some point, all the drinking guests had left. The only ones still here were Emily and a few of those village thugs. They stepped toward me, their expressions unfriendly. "Anna, I know you're strong and I don't have your skills," Emily said softly. "So why don't you just stay here in Bozy Village? We can look after each other. Wouldn't it be better if we both thrived here together?" I saw the greed in her eyes. Even in this second life, she was still trying to drag me into hell with her. She wanted to replicate my success, but only if she could pull me down with her. So it wasn't that she didn't know how much I had suffered in my past life. She just didn't care. She only wanted the end result. The scene from my past life was playing out all over again, except this time there was one more villain. One of Zach's sleazy friends laughed and said, "Your mother already agreed. For 500 yuan, you'll be with me. Plus, Zach will take care of you too. Isn't that a great deal? I'm Zach's brother. Do you really think I'd treat you badly?" A chill ran down my spine. I had always known my mother didn't love me, but I never thought she would personally sell me into the abyss. I stepped back, my expression cold. Emily must have sensed that I was about to escape because she suddenly shouted, "Hurry! Hold her down." In my past life, this was how they had tied me up, but this time I would never let it happen again. I didn't retreat. Instead, I lunged forward. With a swift motion, I pulled a small fruit knife from my pocket and charged straight at Emily, knocking her to the ground. She looked up at me in terror. A slow smile curled on my lips as I pinned her wrist down with all my strength. "If you want to take my life, then let me leave you a mark to remember me by." A flash of silver, the knife came down, and a pale, delicate little finger fell to the ground. The crimson blood pooled quickly, the smell thick and metallic. Emily's shriek pierced the air. The thugs who had been about to restrain me suddenly shrank back, fear gripping their faces. I knew they were afraid. In Bozy Village, every educated youth who had been sent here before had been at their mercy. Some had fought back, but as long as the pain wasn't on their own bodies, they never truly understood fear. I watched them coldly, In the past, I had only known how to be ruthless with myself, enduring more pain, pushing myself further, thinking that was enough to make them fear me. But in the end, I was still the one who got hurt. It was only later that I learned being ruthless to others worked just as well. There was no need to harm myself. I boarded the train home alone. Before, I had thought that the reason my mother and I were distant was because I had been sent to the countryside, that the distance had made it easy for her to forget me, to pretend I had died out there. But now I understand some love never existed to begin with. From this moment on, I had a hometown, but I no longer had a home. Within 2 months, government policies started loosening. I made quick money by reselling cigarettes, and when I saw the right opportunity, I went to Mr. Williams' house to talk about the lumber business. I've done my research, I told him. With the college entrance exams reopening, everyone is focused on studying. The printing factories need a lot of paper. There are several large paper mills in the South. If we transport lumber there, we can triple our profits. And you know wood, it's not just for making paper. There are plenty of other ways we can use it. Mr. Williams frowned. Kid, this kind of business could cost you your head. Drop it. I'll pretend you never said anything today. He was an honest man. He had worked hard to get his job in the city, earning his worker status. He wasn't willing to take risks. I wasn't upset by his rejection. I have the capital, I said, and I know people in the lumber transportation business. If you ever run into trouble, come find me. Honest men only take risks when they have no other choice. In my past life, Mr. Williams had been forced into business out of desperation. This time, I was the one inviting him to join me. About a week later, I heard that Mr. Williams' son had returned from the countryside, but he hadn't come back alive. He had been carried home at the same time his daughter Mary had been severely injured while saving someone. A raging bull had trampled her. Although she was recognized as a town hero and awarded for her bravery, what use was that? Her injuries required much more money than that. Just treating her leg alone would cost several hundred yuan. For an ordinary worker's family, a few hundred yuan was an impossible amount. The people in town were already talking. A girl with a crippled leg is useless. Even an idiot can still get married, as long as she can have children. But Mr. Williams didn't think that way. Less than half a day later, he came to find me. Mr. Williams, I said, watching him carefully, have you thought this through? Once we start, there's no turning back. He hesitated for only a moment before nodding. For my kids, even if it kills me, I'll do it. We traveled to several locations before finding a promising piece of land to store our lumber. I had already marked this area as a future commercial hub. No matter what, I had to secure it. I didn't have the money to buy it yet, so for now, I would just occupy it. At the time, transporting lumber required a special permit. Fortunately, the government had just started promoting the idea of million-yuan entrepreneurs, encouraging people to start businesses. Corruption was still rampant, but getting a permit wasn't too difficult. Our first deal came at just the right time. A major order had fallen short on materials, and we filled the gap just in time. One trip alone brought us a net profit of 2,000 yuan. I gave Mr. Williams 1,000 and reinvested the rest into transportation. With each new deal, our business grew bigger and bigger. The gears of fate had begun to turn. A year later, Mr. Williams was officially recognized as one of the town's millionaires, but his kidneys started failing. The doctor said it was due to kidney stones blocking his system. The kidney stones had embedded themselves deep into the tissue, leading to necrosis. Even with surgery, his body wasn't strong enough to withstand much more. In my past life, I had known that Mr. Williams fell ill, but I hadn't realized it had happened so suddenly. There had been almost no warning signs. That night, he held my hand tightly and said, "Anna, I can't hold you back anymore, but you're just a young girl out there on your own. I worry about you." As he spoke, tears welled up in his eyes. He kept blaming himself, even raising his hand to slap his own face. Some parents feel deep guilt for not being able to provide a better life for their children. Others, more often, take out their frustrations caused by their own failures on their children or spouses. I promised him that I would continue giving him his rightful share of dividends from our business. As for everything else, he didn't need to worry. Maybe my words reassured him because for the first time in a while, he let out a long sigh of relief. But what I didn't expect was that as I was preparing to leave, Mary Williams followed me. Her leg had mostly healed over the past few years, and now, with unwavering determination, she told me she wanted to work with me. At the end of the year, I landed a huge order if delivered on time. The profit would be tens of thousands, but if we failed, we'd have to pay 3 times the amount in penalties. After discussing it with our transport lead, Ray Jang and Mary, we decided we had no choice but to take the risk. If we backed out now, our company, Annawood Industries, would never be able to make a name for itself. Mary and I traveled through 5 or 6 cities gathering enough lumber to fill the order. Everything had gone smoothly until it was time to unload at the docks. There, sitting with his arms crossed and legs spread wide, was none other than Autumn Chun, the second in command of the local forestry police. He had dragged over a stool and parked himself at the dock, refusing to sign the unloading permit. At this time, all lumber shipments had to be officially signed off by local authorities before they could be unloaded. If they were overweight, there would be fines. We had always operated legally, but we also understood how the system worked. I knew that Chun smoked a particular brand, so I respectfully handed him a cigarette while giving his men each a pack of Red Pagoda Mountain as a goodwill gesture. But none of them accepted. Chun sneered. "Girl, we're not trying to make things hard for you, but business is business. If you want things done, you have to pay up. Not 500, not a penny more." As soon as he said that, Mary flared up. "You might as well just rob us then. 500? You actually have the nerve to say that out loud." Chun dusted off his pants and chuckled coldly. "Let me put it this way. Your shipment is going to the printing factories down south, right? You're making at least 10 million on this deal. I'm asking for 500. That's nothing." At that moment, I knew he had targeted us on purpose. If we didn't pay, he wouldn't let us unload. Mary looked at me anxiously, afraid I would cave. She lowered her voice and whispered, "Anna, our entire investment is in this shipment. We even borrowed money to make it happen. We don't even have 50, let alone 500. Of course, I already knew that, but without approval to unload, the entire deal would fall apart, and we'd lose everything." I turned to Chun and said, "We can write you an IOU for the 500. I pulled out a pen and a piece of paper, quickly writing down the debt. Chun didn't even glance at it before tearing it to shreds. I curled my lips into a half smile. Since we can't solve this the easy way, let's go with the hard way. I shot Mary a quick look and whispered, "When I move, run. Don't let them grab you." Her leg had healed, but she still wasn't as fast as an average person. I couldn't let her get caught. I stepped back 2 paces, then swung an iron shovel in front of me, planting it into the ground. Mary didn't run. Instead, she stepped up beside me, standing firm. My heart clenched. For so long I had fought alone, but now I finally had someone standing beside me. As a woman navigating the business world, the only thing I could rely on was fearlessness. At this moment, the most valuable thing I owned was my own life. I fixed my gaze on Chun. "Take the IOU, and I promise I'll pay you back," I said, voice steady. "I'll even add interest if that's what you want." I changed my tone abruptly. "If you won't take the IOU, then let's settle this another way. We can fight it out, and when the detectives arrive to investigate, they'll decide whether my shipment should go through. Either way, you'll walk away with some scars. Well, I'll trade my life for that much." I gripped the iron shovel with full intent. In my past life, when debt collectors came to our home, I had given them a severed finger in return. Ever since then, I had stopped fearing death. Now I stood my ground, completely still, watching the men in front of me exchange uncertain glances. Some of them were already looking uneasy. They had probably never expected a young woman like me to have such audacity. The tension stretched for about the time it takes to smoke a cigarette. Then suddenly Autumn Chun laughed. "I was wondering which crazy bastard managed to land this deal," he said. "Turns out I was right." He waved dismissively. "Forget the IOU. I believe you. When you have time, come visit me sometime." I immediately played along. Of course. Once this deal is done, I'll treat you to a meal." Big Brother Chun personally oversaw the unloading of our shipment, meticulously counting every item while chatting with me. When he heard that Mary Williams had once been recognized as a heroic young woman, he became even more enthusiastic, saying that he rarely saw women in business, and now he had met two in one go. He insisted that we have drinks together sometime since we were planning to establish long-term business with the printing factories in the South. Having Chun on our side was a good thing. With time, we built rapport, and eventually, we were calling each other brother and sister. This deal brought in a great profit, and with the extra cash, I was able to buy the storage yard we had been renting. That land would become prime commercial real estate in less than 10 years. I also built a 3-story building right next to the storage yard. The first 2 floors would be used as office space, and I would live on the top floor when the construction was completed. Old friends and business partners came by to celebrate. They congratulated me with flattering words, and I accepted them all with a smile. But just as the atmosphere was at its liveliest, my mother and Emily walked in. I didn't know who had invited them. The moment they stepped inside, my mother started criticizing the house. "This layout is terrible. Who puts a bathroom facing the living room? Such a waste of money. And that wallpaper, it's so garish. Just looking at it gives me a headache. I'll call a worker to tear it down later." The room fell silent. Emily, acting as if she owned the place, casually sat on the sofa peeling an orange with her 4-fingered hand, the one missing a pinky. She looked up at me with a smirk. "Anna, I'm planning to open a dumpling shop in the county. Give me the land next to yours." She wasn't asking. She was declaring she even had the audacity to carry in a large bag of belongings and stride straight into one of the rooms. When I looked inside, I saw her clothes and shoes already being unpacked. Emily had once managed to latch onto a wealthy family, but after her so-called father-in-law got into trouble, she had to leave overnight. When she returned, she was beaten down and covered in scars. Clearly, she hadn't been doing well. Back when I left home, none of them had lifted a finger to help me. Now, after I had built something for myself, they had the nerve to waltz in and claim it. The murmurs of my guests didn't sit well with Emily. She suddenly slammed her hand on the table. "What do you mean stealing? Anna owes me this. Don't you see this?" She raised her mutilated hand. "This is the finger she cut off. I went to the countryside in her place. I married that bastard Zach. He beat me, cursed me, and cheated on me. I suffered so much. What's wrong with her giving me a piece of land? In fact, the shares in her company should belong to me and Mom too." She spoke with absolute self-righteousness, not an ounce of shame in her voice. Emily thought that saying this would make others pity her, that they would take her side, but she was dead wrong. I had always believed that actions speak louder than words. The room went dead silent. Everyone stared at her with disbelief and disdain. They weren't looking at me with sympathy. They were disgusted with her. Even Auntie Lou from the next street over, who had watched me grow up, finally spoke up. "Anna has had a hard life. I remember winters when she was trapped in the fields, covered in frost, nearly freezing to death, and no one came to find her. And now, just because she's successful, you come running to take her? I've seen shameless people before, but this is a first." Others nodded in agreement. My mother's face turned red. "Shut up. Shut up. This is our family's business. It's none of your concern." I looked around at the people in the room. These were my people now. If my mother and Emily thought they could just walk in and take what's mine, they were gravely mistaken. Today was supposed to be a good day, and I didn't want them ruining the mood. So I called Mary Williams over and asked her to take our friends to visit the lumber yard and check out the new site. Once everyone had left, I sat down on the sofa, smiling at Emily. "You want my land? Do you even know how I got it?" Emily scoffed and rolled her eyes. "Obviously you made money and bought it." I laughed. "How much do you think it's worth?" She opened her mouth, but before she could speak, I cut her off. "Emily, don't play games with me. You know exactly what I'm like. If you push me, this will turn into a fight to the death." My mother immediately jumped in, displeased. "What do you mean fight to the death? She's your sister. You have to take care of her for the rest of your life." I shot her a cold look and snapped. "If you want a good life, shut up. Tell me, has she given you any money? Has she bought you a fur coat? I think that 50 yuan was my father's entire 2 month salary. I raised an eyebrow, not wanting it. Her expression changed instantly. I'll take it. I'll take it. Emily did end up opening her dumpling shop. She copied my exact business model, and even stole my menu. But because she had wasted too much time, she wasn't the first dumpling shop in the county, so she was forced into a price war. And let's be real, nobody's money falls from the sky. When people saw cheaper dumplings, they naturally went where the price was lower. The price war had gotten vicious, and it wasn't sustainable. The neighboring businesses were all waiting for Emily to collapse, each one scheming behind her back. But Emily wasn't cautious at all. As soon as she made some money, she started boasting about how capable she was, flaunting herself as an example of perseverance despite her disability. Strangely enough, this actually earned her a group of admirers who admired her resilience and character. The more people praised her, the more she forgot about targeting me. At first, I thought that as long as Emily stayed occupied with her dumpling shop, at least her life would be better than it was in the past. But she didn't see it that way. Not long after, rumors started spreading that people were getting food poisoning after eating at her restaurant. And it wasn't just 1 or 2 cases, it happened repeatedly. Soon enough, angry customers began causing a scene right outside her shop. When the health inspection officials arrived, things took a disastrous turn. It turned out Emily's business license and health permits were all forged. She had never even registered her dumpling shop properly. And when they checked the kitchen, it was infested with cockroaches. The dumpling filling was made from lymphatic meat from pig necks, cheap leftover scraps that had rotted before being ground together with vegetables. The entire place, even Emily herself, had terrible hygiene, and the kitchen smelled horrendous. The inspectors immediately shut the restaurant down. The scandal spread fast. It shook the whole county. For a while, people were too scared to eat out anywhere. Emily had single-handedly crushed the government's confidence in the booming economy. The newly appointed county secretary took this as an opportunity to make an example out of her. Using this case as his first major crackdown, he cleaned house, shutting down all the unregulated businesses. Many unscrupulous merchants were caught up in the purge and miserably forced out of business. As for Emily, the main culprit, she was arrested. At that time, being labeled a fraudster was no small matter. Before her sentencing, Emily was paraded through the streets as an example. People threw rotten vegetables and eggs at her, shouting that she was a parasite ruining the prosperity of this era. She had held back progress, and the people despised her for it. I had expected my mother, who had always doted on Emily, to go see her, but she didn't. Auntie Lou from the neighborhood even? I asked her why. Her answer was that she's an embarrassment. I'd rather pretend I never had this daughter. Emily was sentenced to 2 years in prison and fined heavily, but just a few days before she was supposed to be taken into custody, she escaped. A bad feeling settled in my gut. At the time, I was spending every day at the lumber yard. I had hired several carpenters and painters, and they were working overtime to finish a new line of furniture. With the rise of real estate development, the demand for modern furniture was only growing. Selling lumber to printing factories was good money, but it still meant dealing with middlemen. Transforming raw lumber into furniture, however, let us control the market directly. The country was rapidly expanding its cities, and wooden furniture was in high demand. If I could establish myself as a leading brand now, I could dominate the industry before anyone else. Piles and piles of lumber filled the yard. I couldn't help but feel excited thinking about the profits ahead. But as I walked through the lumber yard, I suddenly heard a strange sound coming from a secluded corner. A voice filled with hatred and resentment. "Anna, you think you're so powerful, huh? Let's see how powerful you are now. I just wanted to make money. I just wanted someone to love me. What's wrong with that?" It was Emily. I stopped in my tracks, my heart pounding. Her voice grew hysterical. "Why did Zach treat you like a queen, but with me, I had to get beaten every day? With you he could be a chairman, but with me, he was nothing but a worthless drunk. How is that fair?" She started laughing crazily. "You like these piles of wood so much, don't you? Then I'll burn them all down." My stomach dropped. From where I stood, I could see Emily's silhouette, her eyes burning with hatred. She was holding a box of matches, and kerosene was already splashed all over the yard. If she struck that match, everything, millions worth of lumber, would go up in flames. She was still rambling madly. Anna, no matter how many times you live, you'll always lose to me. Even if we started over 100 times, I'd still destroy you. She raised the match, but she had talked too much. Before she could light it, I grabbed a wooden club as thick as an arm and swung it at the back of her head. A loud crack echoed through the yard. Emily collapsed instantly. I knew my own strength. It looked bloody, but she wouldn't die. I called a few of my workers and told them to go get help. Then I reported it to the police. By the time the officers arrived, they immediately noticed the strong smell of kerosene everywhere. Their faces darkened. "Miss Anna, this is a lumberyard. With this much kerosene, if a fire had started, forget just this place. The entire county could have been wiped out." I nodded seriously. "Yes, you're absolutely right." I even handed them some fresh fruit and spoke earnestly. "I'll be buying a few more guard dogs for security, and I'd really appreciate it if you could swing by during your patrols from time to time. Of course, if you ever have time. You're always welcome to stop by for tea." Ever since the police started patrolling more often, thieves and troublemakers steered clear of my lumberyard. I had never felt safer. Emily was taken back into custody. During the police interview, I brought up Zach's case. As soon as they heard what I had to say, they immediately called the secretary of Boise Village. It turned out that Zach was dead, and his death was suspicious. Officially, he had drowned in the river, but his mother insisted that Zach had been a strong swimmer. He hadn't drowned by accident. The river wasn't even that deep. There was no way he wouldn't have made it to shore. With all the pieces put together, it was clear Emily had killed him. Murder, arson. She had committed every major crime. When Emily was sentenced to death, my mother locked herself in her room for an entire day. She didn't speak to anyone. She sat there like a lifeless old woman, decades older than she really was. My father, too, looked as if he had aged 10 years overnight, his once dark hair streaked with white. I knew that Emily's fate had become an unspoken barrier between me and my parents, but I no longer cared. In my past life, after I gained wealth, I had desperately tried to prove myself. I had thought that if I worked hard enough, if I achieved enough, my parents would finally love me. But all I had done was give them an opportunity to exploit me, to drain me of everything I had. I had acted like I was free, but in reality, family ties had still been strangling me. But this time I chose myself. I focused on my own happiness, and suddenly everything became easier. Emily's execution was scheduled for the 5th of August. No one went to see her off. Later, a police officer mentioned to me that when she died, she had been smiling. She had said, "Even if I die this time, I'll just be reborn again." I laughed. "People aren't cats," I replied. "They don't get 9 lives." I treated the officer to a meal before heading home. Annawood Industries thrived. I bought large amounts of real estate and became one of the biggest property and lumber tycoons in the country. To make up for the regrets of my past life, I studied hard and eventually got into college. There I met many business elites, and as I spent more time with them, I became more open-minded. Over the next 10 years, the name Annawood became known nationwide. Every time someone called me Chairwoman Anna, I couldn't help but smile to myself. Mary Williams eventually married Autumn Chun, and they had a son. That little boy was wild. He ran around all day insisting he would marry me when he grew up. I would just pull down his little toddler pants, give him a few pats on the butt, and knock him down a peg. Mary would laugh and say, "Anna, you should find someone too." But I always brushed it off. "Finding a husband, that's all about fate," I said casually. If I wanted someone stronger than me, well, there are plenty of young girls waiting for him to choose from. I wouldn't stand a chance. And if I had to settle for someone weaker than me, what am I supposed to serve him for the rest of my life? I waved my hand dismissively. Not happening. Mary thought about it and actually agreed with me. Then just for fun, she scolded Autumn a little. I listened, laughing. Life was good.